Next, we'll hear from Dr. Steve McKinney.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Deputy Secretary, fellow members of the Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I speak to you today in a couple of different roles. My company is Inside Incorporated. I'm the founder and CEO of the company. We are the software company behind all of the emergency operations plans for every school in the state of Alabama. The majority of the community colleges, all of the public schools, the majority of the private schools, and some of the four-year universities. We also have a presence throughout the Southeast. You may have heard reference to Virtual Alabama several times throughout the course of today. We are the technology that powers that system. What I want to tell you about today is an example of how this nation has been able to rise and achieve incredible things with a little bit of leadership and a lot of will. In 1958, at a Catholic school in Chicago, Our Lady of Angels, there was a significant fire. 95 students and teachers died. So if you look at that as an example of pivot and change in our nation, what we saw immediately after that was that in the course of 1 year, over 16,500 school buildings were brought up to a fire safety code. We increased drills. We increased our overall approach to safety in schools because we understood that even though it was hard, we must make a change. And so as a nation, that is now something we expect. You don't go to a building that doesn't have sprinklers. You don't go to a building that doesn't have fire alarms. And since 1958, no school fire has killed more than 10 people. That is proof that we can rise and change. And what I propose to you is that the opportunities exist for innovation, but we do need some minimum guidance to establish where the lowest rung of the ladder is. The federal government has the opportunity to provide us with that guidance. And what we really want to look at is things like minimum physical security guidelines. There are things like the CEPTED guidelines, the crime prevention through environmental design initiatives that are extremely complicated. I know that one of the Deputy Secretary's comments was, in effect, to rely on the locals to be able to address their local needs. But the reality is the complexity of these needs is often more than the skill sets available to those locals. So we need minimum standards to understand and address this. We also need personnel required training for crisis response and crisis intervention. So one of the things that I believe is that the commercial sector can rise and innovate as well. But what we also need in that regard is additional help with liability. We can't engage with our schools to make sure that we are providing technological solutions to a degree that facilitate physical security, surveillance, and communication without concern about the potential liability were there an event. So some of these things are extremely important. Initiatives like the Safety Act from the Department of Homeland Security, of course, provides some elements of that protection, but there are other things that are needed to be done. So what I would ask of this committee is that as you move forward, as you do make recommendations, as you do look at these things, think about the principles of simplicity and minimum guidelines for physical security. You can have a significant impact. Think about the basic and structure of required training for crisis response and crisis intervention at our schools. Some of these things will contribute to building a culture of school safety, and they will also help us in establishing what is the minimum kind of step forward for not only our commercial sector, but our public sector as well. If we can understand all of what those things are, then that puts us in a position to rise to the occasion. I'll leave you with two quotes real quickly. If children feel safe, they can take risks, they can ask questions, make mistakes, learn to trust, share their feelings, and grow. That was Alfie Kohn in 1993. But today, Elon Musk says, when something is important enough, you do it even though the odds are not in your favor. So I ask this committee please to consider these remarks, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Steve.